Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto inherits Zabuza's sword and secretly marries with Hana, part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Hana really wasn't happy right now. Not only had the boy gotten away, but now her mother was going to go on her hunt to scare him off after she finally found a guy who seemed to like animals and actually seemed to care about his companion. She was absolutely certain that her triplets would easily agree to him, as she wouldn't be able to be with anyone without their consent as well. Coco is a rare kitsune. Her breed can grow multiple tails as a result of their chakra reserves. The tails are a direct show of their strength, just like our Ninken's strength is shown in their size. She's young, only what I would guess to be a year or two. She'll probably get as big as one of my huskies depending on how many tails she's able to grow. She currently has 2 tails. The surprising thing is the bond that she and her companion share. It is very strong, and it's only been a short time since they've been together. Hana said, her voice petering out at the end as she was still stunned by the strength of the bond that she had seen. Soom was surprised by this, though she did her best not to show it. She had the name of the boy and that was enough for her, though if what her daughter was telling her she might just make an exception for him and let him have a try for her hand. So, do you like him? Soom pressed. Hana groaned, as she knew this questioning was not going to end. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Flashback end. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Her mother had not given up on trying to figure out what she felt for Naruto. It wasn't easy to answer her, as she herself had no clue what felt for the blue-haired shinobi. It didn't help that her mother would question her any chance she got, whether it be at home in front of her little brother, or at work in front of her fellow medics. Her mother sure could be a nag when she wanted to. She had hoped to see him when she dropped off the paperwork, but he had already left before she had gotten there. She was damned and determined to figure this boy out. Heaving a sigh, as she walked down the halls of the animal hospital, she was almost done with her work day. She just had to drop off the last of the records at the front desk and then she was done, and she wasn't going to be headed home just yet. She had brought her Ninken to work today, not only to get them checked out, but also so she could hunt the boy down. At times she wondered if she was taking her curiosity to an obsessive level, but then again she didn't really care. As no one was at the front desk, she placed the files in the to be processed bin, then hung up her coat. Giving a quick whistle, she walked out the door followed by 3 identical huskies. She wasn't like most Inuzukas. Not only did she go and learn medical ninjutsu, but she was also bound to 3 dogs instead of just 1. She had only been 6 years old when they were born, and they just took to her as she did to them. Since then they had been inseparable, fighting, playing and laughing together. They had been through thick and thin together. They could tell that Hana was on a mission. They weren't positive what kind of mission, but they could tell that she was serious. As she walked out onto the street, she turned to her Ninken and held out a few hairs. All right boys, I want you to help me track down this smell, okay? Hana said as the dogs sniffed at the scent. Within minutes they caught the scent and took off with the feral kunoichi hot on their heels. The trio of dogs led Hana across the village towards the training grounds. As she entered training ground 7, she was forced to stop for a moment as the area was filled with a mist. From the scent in the air, she knew it was man-made. Calling upon her previous experiences with man-made mists, she quickly concluded that it was the Kurigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist jutsu, that forces from Kurigakure would use often. Hana, not wanting to be forced to rely on her nose only, held her Ninken back in the trees as they waited for whenever it would clear. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was currently in the mists. He was practicing using it, hoping that make it combat ready. He had his Hittite over his eyes, so he would have to focus entirely on his ears. He had been doing this training for close to an hour. Hearing the ever so slight pitter-patter of pod feet, Naruto quickly turned and caught Coco as she jumped into the air. That was how he was training. Coco would hide in the mists and try to tackle him, and he'd try to stop her by catching her. This improved both Coco and Naruto's reaction timing to attacks, as well as speed for Coco and hearing for Naruto. Damn, I almost had you. Coco whined out. Naruto, lifting the Hittite onto his forehead, chuckled as he released his jutsu and began to stroke her behind her floppy ears, gaining a coup from Coco. It just means I'm getting better is all, Naruto said before his ears picked up 4 different heartbeats. He hadn't heard them before as his attention was so focused on hearing everything in the clearing, not so much in the trees lining the clearing. Show yourself. Naruto called out, as Coco crawled up onto his neck, barring her fangs in the direction Naruto was facing. Well, that was impressive, to find me so quickly, a feminine voice called out. Out of the shadows of the trees walked Hana, clad in her chunin gear, which consisted of tight forest brown capris, a sleeveless mesh shirt under her form-fitting chunin vest. Behind her were 3 huskies who, while trying to give the illusion of laziness, Naruto could see were on high alert. Naruto, quickly recognizing who it was, gave a smile. Ah, Hana-san, to what do I owe the pleasure of a visit? Naruto asked. Hana almost giggled. Naruto had sounded older than she knew him to be. She knew he was only 13 years old from her younger brother, yet he gave off an air of confidence and experience that Hana couldn't help but fall for. Giving the shinobi in front of her a once-over, she couldn't help but notice the changes about him. His arms seemed more defined, as was his torso. Since he wasn't wearing his vest at the moment, she could almost make out the rippling muscle underneath the skin-tight shirt he wore. His eyes seemed to hold an almost unbreakable resolve in them, however there was something lying underneath that Hana wasn't quite able to make out. It was as if he was keeping a part of himself hidden from the world, and he was doing a damn good job of it. I just wanted to talk with you. I've never met anyone who's bonded with an animal outside of my clan, so you kind of intrigue me. Hana said in an almost coy voice. The tone she used almost set Naruto on edge. It was as if she was baiting him, hoping he'd give something up. He was also on edge, because no one ever wanted to know about him. Hell, most people just wished he would roll over dead. So what would you like to know? Naruto asked, paying attention to everything around him and everything she said. Meanwhile, Coco, seeing that there was no danger, decided to curl up around Naruto's neck, laying herself out on his shoulders and falling asleep. Why don't I buy you a cup of tea and we can talk? How does that sound? Hana asked. She could tell by his body language that he was defensive right now, and she knew she wouldn't be able to get any answers out of him that way. Naruto thought on it for only a short moment before nodding and gesturing for her to lead the way. Hana led the boy in silence to a new cafe that had just opened up. They had walked through the streets in silence, neither one willing to start the conversation. As they arrived, they took a seat outside so they wouldn't have to send their animal companions away. After a quick order of tea and a few treats for their furry friends, Hana went back to observing Naruto. She noticed that he looked uncomfortable for some reason. With a quick glance around, she didn't find any reason for it, so she chalked it up to being with her. He must not have a lot of experience with women, Hana thought to herself. You don't have to look so uncomfortable, Naruto-san. I'm not going to bite, much. Hana said with a smirk. Naruto gave a small chuckle, but didn't seem to relax. It wasn't so much the fact that he was uncomfortable sitting here drinking tea with a beautiful woman. No, that was a different matter all on its own. No, he was uncomfortable right now due to the fact that he wasn't used to sitting out in public. The village didn't seem to catch on to his new looks yet, and he was nervous that they would any second and throw him out. He didn't want that happening, especially not in front of someone who had shown him kindness. Sorry, just not used to this is all. Naruto said with a small sheepish smile. So what is it you wanted? Naruto asked. Hana's smirk slowly slipped from her face as a thoughtful expression took over. I just wanted to get to know you. I've never met anyone who can form a bond as strong or as quick as you have with Coco there. Hana said in a light tone, as if it was nothing special really. Naruto just leaned forward, feeling Coco shift slightly in her position. Well, what would you like to know? Oh, where to begin? Hana asked rhetorically. For the next hour both teens sat there, sipping tea and talking with one another. From a distance they looked like two friends who had gotten together after a long time apart. Naruto was careful not to divulge too much into his personal life, just relating experiences he's had with his team. He was able to make Hana laugh at a few of his stories of him versus the demon cat of Konoha, Tora. Hana would talk about her work or her clan, a smile not far from her face. The only time they stopped talking was to order another round of tea. At the end of the hour, Hana knew she had to get home, otherwise her mother would come looking for her, and of course that would lead her to meeting Naruto. She had slowly started to like the guy, and she was not about to subject him to her mother's treatment. Naruto, having spent more time than he had anticipated, needed to get back to training to stay on schedule. Little did they know, on a rooftop not far away, they were being watched from the shadows. As they got up and paid their check, both nodded and agreed to meet again whenever they had free time. Hana slowly walked to her clan's compound with her triplets in tow. She was musing over the mystery that was Naruto. She knew he hadn't shared much, but what he had shared she found that she liked. As she walked through the gates she immediately felt a presence behind her. Well, don't you look happy? Hana turned around to be greeted with the sight of her smirking mother. She hadn't realized that she had been smiling the entire time, or that she was practically radiating happiness. What do you mean, Ka-san? Hana asked, trying to wipe the smile off her face, but to no avail. Seeing her daughter attempt to stop smiling caused Sum to roar with laughter on the inside. She had been observing her for the past hour. When she had taken her ninkin to work with her, Sum knew her daughter was planning something and she figured it was going to be to track down the boy. While Sum knew she had been pestering Hana about her relationship with the blue-haired shinobi, she was in all actuality happy. She knew Naruto hadn't had the easiest of lives, and to her own fault of being caught up in council politics and clan affairs she hadn't been able to help the child at all. Oh, Sum began as she slowly circled her daughter, just that you seem rather happy after your little date. Hana's eyes shot open, as she felt like she was prey being hunted. Not only had her mother found out that she had met with Naruto, but that they had spent time together. Quickly covering up her shock with steeled determination she moved to complete denial. I don't know what you're talking about, Ka-san. Now if you'll excuse me, I had a long day at work and I think I need a shower. Sum's smirk grew even greater at her daughter's response. When her daughter walked past her towards the house she just had to throw the icing on the cake. Oh, did you want this photo? I think you and him look so adorable, Sum said, holding up a small photo of Naruto and Hana laughing together. Hana moved so fast, she was nothing but a blur as she grabbed the photo out of her mother's hands and ran into the house. The entire time this was happening, her ninkin had just sat there listening to the conversation. In no time flat Hana had made it into her room, closing and locking the door. Her breath came in a soft pant, as she didn't realize how fast she had forced her body to move. After catching her breath, she put the photo on her dresser face down as she pulled out a pair of loose-fitting shorts and a t-shirt to lounge around in. She's so damn nosy. Hana thought to herself, as she made her way into her adjoining bathroom and started to shower. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto found himself back in the same clearing again, only this time without the mist. He was currently working on making his, what he dubbed, Kori no Sum, claws of ice. So far he had been able to extend the claws over his fingernails. They weren't really sharp at all, but when he had tested them they made frozen marks on the tree. The thing that really irked him was he was only able to make 7 marks before they shattered. He was currently hoping to increase, but as he made his 6th strike, "Alright, that was 6, here's 7. Naruto exclaimed as he moved to slash at the tree. As the claws made contact, he could feel them crack. As the hit followed through, the cracking continued until the claws were no more. "Damn it!" Naruto exclaimed, his frustration getting the better of him. "Not only does it take me like forever to make them, but they're so damn fragile." Coco sighed from her place off to the side. She knew Naruto was getting worked up. It was inevitable really, but to Coco he was making excellent progress. It had been 2 days since he started working on this jutsu, so she wasn't all that worried. "Naruto, you need to calm down. You've only just started. Now don't we need to go meet up with Duck Butt and Foghorn?" Coco asked in a cheerful voice. Since getting back from Nami no Kuni, she had really taken a dislike to Naruto's teammates. Mainly for their continuous insults towards him, and since Naruto never defended himself against them they kept coming all the time. "Coco," Naruto said in a complaining tone. He wasn't really in the mood to listen to insults from either side, as Coco had slowly been getting more and more vocal with them. Coco just walked over to him and rubbed her side against his leg, and all the tension between them seemed to stop. "Alright, let's go," Naruto said in voice that sounded tired. Coco, using her claws, climbed up his right leg and perched herself on his shoulder. Naruto was used to this by now, and didn't even pause as Mii made his way towards his team's meeting place. As he walked he couldn't help but think back over all of the training he had undergone to get to this point. How he spent many hours with his old friend Tenten learning how to use his blade properly, or all of the ninjutsu he taught himself. He could only think to what would happen had he not jumped with Haku. He'd probably still be running around, screaming how much he wanted to be Hokage, and still wearing those orange jumpsuits. He still remembered when his team saw his new outfit. Sasuke was stunned into silence, or he was just shocked and began to brood like always. Sakura screamed about how Naruto was trying to copy Sasuke's coolness and how he'll never be anything like him. Kakashi just took one look at Naruto and then patted him on the head telling him, "Good job." Naruto tried to deck him for that, but even with his back turned Kakashi was able to dodge him. As Naruto neared the meeting place, he pulled out a book he was carrying with him so he could study. In his mind he was going over the style of fighting him and Coco had been speaking about as she took a nap on his shoulder. The style consisted of quick and fast-paced movements. He would use his claws, if he ever got them combat ready, and hit areas on the body to slow movement before he could fully disable them. When combined with Coco's speed and flexibility, they made a very formidable pair. As everyone arrived, they all set about waiting like usual for their sensei to show up. However, unlike usual, Kakashi showed up 30 minutes early. "Yo," the one-eyed Jonin said with a mock salute. The team was startled, and if it hadn't been Coco telling Naruto that it was really him, he would have thought he was caught in a genjutsu like Sakura and Sasuke thought, though only Sakura tried to dispel the possible illusion. Seeing his students not believe he could arrive on time made him sweat drop a bit. "Anyway, sorry I'm a little late, but I was getting your applications to the Chunin exams. Here you go," Kakashi said as he handed each of his students a single form. "If you wish to participate, go to room 301 in the academy this Friday at 0800. No one is going to force you to participate, but I believe all of you can handle this. I'll see you at the exams," the lazy Jonin sensei told his students, as he left them eager to continue reading his little orange smut. Left there standing without the adult, the teens all felt differently about the exam. Naruto and Sasuke were both excited to get to test their skills against other genin, though only Sasuke say this is a way to increase his power. Sakura felt rather unsure of herself, but would attend anyway just to impress her Sasuke-kun. Naruto and Koko quickly pocketed the application and left to go train on their own some more. They had only 3 days till the exam and Naruto was going to use every minute he could. Sasuke left to go train as well at the Uchiha compound, while Sakura continued to pester the boy for a date. While heading to his favorite training ground, Naruto heard a kid struggling. Quickly turning the corner, he said kid struggling in the grip of a boy wearing what appeared to be a cat suit with kabuki makeup on, a Suna Hitai, and a strange object wrapped in bandages on his back. In a tree near him was a kunoichi also from Suna if the Hitai was anything to go by, yelling at the other Suna shinobi to put the boy down. Upon further inspection, Naruto noticed the boy was Konohamaru, the Hokage's grandson. Naruto had a small soft spot as the kid's dream was also his own, and as such said that they were rivals for the title. Not wanting the boy to get hurt, Naruto decided to intervene. Hey Suna Nin. You might want to put the Hokage's grandson down before you inadvertently cause a war. All 3 of you might as well come out as well, no reason trying to hide in the tree. Naruto said, his eyes on the tree. The 2 Suna Nin looked up in the trees and their eyes widened with fear. GG Gaara. Both of them stammered out. The 3rd Suna Nin, now being called Gaara, quickly used a Suna Shunshin, sand body flicker, and placed himself between Naruto and the other shinobi. Kankuro, you're an embarrassment to Suna. Put the boy down before I kill you. Gaara said, his voice menacing with the promise that he would do as he said. Kankuro quickly released his grip on the boy, who quickly dropped to the ground and darted behind Naruto. I apologize for anything my brother did. Gaara said in a monotone voice. Naruto took the time to better access the situation. The girl behind the small redhead had a fan on her back and wore a light lavender dress that went down about mid-thigh. On her left leg she had mesh armor, and he could see the armor at the top where it held onto her shoulders as well. Around her waist was what appeared to be a red belt, and she had 4 pigtails tied back. The boy had a mess of red hair, and was wearing a black body suit with mesh armor peeking out at the sleeves. He had a brown belt tied around his torso that held what looked to be a gourd of sand as well as a piece of white cloth over the belt. On his forehead the kanji for love was in a red dye. No harm, no foul, Naruto said, as he collected Konohamaru and was about to leave before he was addressed again. Konoha Nin, what is your name? Naruto turned and saw that it was the same redhead that had addressed him before, Uzumaki Naruto. And what are your names? Naruto asked curiously. The boy's scent was off-putting as he smelled of sand and blood. I'm Subaku no Gaara. Gaara replied in his monotone voice. The girl seemed to perk up at being acknowledged. I'm Tamari. The girl said with a smile. The boy next to her wearing the cat suit didn't speak at all and just held his tongue. I'm assuming you're all here for the exams, correct? Naruto asked, getting a nod from the group. Well, please try to cause any more potentially disastrous incidents anymore. With another nod of understanding, the trio of Suna Nin left, and Naruto went off to find Konohamaru's sensei so he would be watched. From the vibe they were giving off, Naruto wanted to be prepared for them if he had to face them in the upcoming exams. Finally, the day of the exams had arrived. Naruto was standing outside the academy with Koko on her usual place, his shoulders. As 7:30 rolled around, Sasuke and Sakura showed up, Sasuke looking geared up for a fight, though Sakura looked rather nervous. Team 7 entered the academy and quickly took to the stairs. As they reached the 2nd floor, they came upon the sight of a large group of genin outside of a room labeled 301, being bullied by 2 older genin that stood in front of the door. Naruto thought it was odd seeing as they had been on the 2nd floor. With a quick scan of the group, Naruto spotted a friendly face, and being him he had to go say hi. Oi, Ten-chan, ready for the exams? Asked the energetic ice wielder, waving at his friend and part-time sensei. Tenten turned to see Naruto waving as she quickly got up from helping her teammate off the ground. Oh hey Naruto-kun, hey Koko-chan. I'm surprised to see you here. Guy-sensei made us wait a year for entering the exams. Good luck, Tenten said, giving the boy a smile. He was a really good student, and she was hoping to see him use his sword in a real battle. Naruto quickly gave her another smile before moving in a little closer so he could whisper in her ear, "You too, Ten-chan. See you on the 3rd floor. Nice idea to hide your abilities, by the way." The blue-haired boy whispered to her. He didn't want others to know so there wouldn't be as much competition. As Naruto began moving back to his team to lead them upstairs, he forgot one key aspect about his team. That being that Sasuke had very little control over his arrogance. Show us room 301. This is obviously a genjutsu. The Uchiha demanded with a smirk on his face. He wanted everyone to see that the Uchiha clan was above such a stupid genjutsu. Naruto wasn't able to stop the forehead slap he gave himself at his teammate's stupidity. The genjutsu dropped and the two bullies moved to quickly attack Sasuke. They made it halfway before being stopped by Rock Lee, who in a display of taijutsu prowess kicked both away, forcing them to fly backwards from the strength of the kick. Lee turned to who he saved, only for his eyes to fall on Sakura and hearts filled his eyes. "Hello my beautiful youthful flower. My name is Rock Lee and I will protect you with my life." Lee proclaimed in a cheer-filled yell, hoping that the girl would love him back. I mean, he was willing to protect her from harm. What girl wouldn't fall for him, right? Ew, you're weird. I love Sasuke-kun. Sakura shouted back at the bowl-cut-haired boy, as she tried to hug her Sasuke-kun to show how in love they were, only for him to quickly dodge said hug. Lee, however, was not deterred by this. He quickly turned his attention to the Uchiha with a fire blazing in his eyes. "Yosh. Sasuke, you are a genius and I wish to fight against you to show what my flames of youth can do." The mini guy yelled out. Tenten and Naruto stood off to the side, banging their heads against the wall from their teammates' display of stupidity. Lee and Guy were okay once you got used to them, but they were friendly with your ears and always making foolish challenges. Sasuke with a smirk accepted the fight and the pair walked upstairs for a quick match. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I told you not to fight him. Naruto droned out as he half-dragged a beat-up-looking Sasuke down the hallway to room 301. Shut it, Dobi. Sasuke growled out, as he ripped his arm off of Naruto's shoulder, so I miscalculated on a few things, big deal. I had him where I wanted. Naruto just chuckled as he felt Koko retake her place on his shoulders. Not from where I was standing, Naruto said offhandedly as they reached the door only to see Kakashi leaning next to it. Yo. The one-eyed Jonin said with a two-fingered salute, glad you all could make it. Well, you all can proceed on in. Kakashi said, looking bored as he pushed himself off the wall. Wait, you mean we couldn't before? Sakura asked, as she stopped fussing over Sasuke for a second. Why yes, you couldn't. If even one of you had not made it, none of you could have proceeded, since this is a team exam. But you all are here so it's a moot point now. Good luck, Kakashi said as he turned down the hall and walked away with a backhanded wave. When he was out of sight, Naruto turned to his two teammates only to see Sakura trying to maul Sasuke in an attempt to help him. Giving a small prey to Kami that he could survive this exam and leave this team, he opened the door only to be tackled right away. Oh, Sasuke-kun, I've missed you. Have you missed me? Naruto was currently face first into Ino Yamanaka's chest, the co-president of the Sasuke fan club, as she kept a tight grip on his head despite his struggles to get released. Ino, let go. Naruto roared out as he wasn't able to breathe. Hearing the voice, she looked down to see icy blue hair, then looking to her right saw Sasuke dealing with Sakura. Ah, what the hell? Ino exclaimed as she pushed the stranger away. Naruto, taking a deep breath, looked around and saw Koko rolling on the floor laughing. "Oh, shut it, Koko!" Naruto yelled at the giggling fox. Still chuckling, the fox climbed his leg for the third time and laid on his shoulders. "Naruto," said Shinobi, turned to see the rest of the rookie 9 looking at him with wonder and curiosity. It then struck him that they didn't know about his new appearance, though they could tell it was him by his voice. What the hell happened to him? Was the collective thought of the 8 of the 9 rookies. The 9th rookie thought something along the lines of, "Oh my god, Naruto-kun. He looks amazing. Bet you can't guess who that was." Naruto, not being able to come up with a good response of his own, decided to borrow one. "Yo." Naruto said with a 2-fingered salute. This stopped Sasuke and Sakura in their tracks and he gained deadpanned expressions from them. Naruto moved into the room without saying another word. Is yo even considered a word? And took to leaning against the wall. None of them, except his teammates, could believe that the tall, intimidating shinobi in front of them could be the same orange jumpsuit wearing idiot they went to the academy with. The black fox with a Konoha Hitai around her neck also confused them. Hinata, not being able to take it anymore, fainted at the sight of Naruto with a giant blush and grin on her face. Before they could say anything to him, a silver-haired genin wearing glasses interrupted them. "You might want to settle down a bit, rookies. The other guys here aren't too happy with you and you're only drawing more attention," the older genin said while pushing up his glasses. The rookie 9 looked around to see that every eye was on them. Kiba was the first to speak his mind to the new guy. "Who the hell are you?" Kiba barked out, not really translating the older genin's words quickly enough. "My name is Yakushi Kabuto. This will be my 7th time to take the exams. They are rather difficult. How about I help you rookies out?" the mysterious genin said, as he knelt down and reached into his weapons pouch, pulling out a deck of cards. "These here are my nin info cards. By pushing chakra into them I can show you info on any shinobi in the exams. This there anyone you'd like to see?" the genin asked. Off to the side, Koko had whispered a warning to Naruto. She could smell snakes and blood on the guy, and she knew it wouldn't mean anything good. Back with the group, Sasuke spoke up first, shocking most of the group who were not used to so many words form the brooding shinobi. "I want to see the info on Rock Lee and Uzumaki Naruto," the Uchiha asked. Most were curious to what the card would say about Naruto. What most didn't know was that just about every other genin in there had turned their attention to the conversation. "Oh, you know their names? That makes this too easy. Alright, I'll start with Rock Lee," the glasses-wearing genin said as he pulled a card out. Putting a single finger to it as well as holding a one-handed seal, the seemingly blank card filled with information. Picking the card up, Kabuto cleared his throat. "Rock Lee, genin. He's completed 54 D-rank missions, and 7 C-rank missions with his teammates, Neji Hyuga and Tenten Higurashi. Skills consist of high marks in taijutsu with no skills known about his ninjutsu or genjutsu skills. I don't think he's able to use them." Now onto Uzumaki Naruto. Pulling out another card and doing the same with it, he picked it up and read it as well. "Uzumaki Naruto, genin. 25 D-rank missions, 2 C-rank missions and 2 A-rank mission. An A rank is a genin. Impressive. He's teamed up with Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. It says he activated a bloodline while on a mission, though the abilities of it are unknown. His skills in taijutsu, genjutsu, and ninjutsu are also unknown. The only thing that is really known is he has a registered nin kitsune named Koko, a rare multi-tailed fox that are almost on the verge of extinction. They are said to be a fox that are exposed and born with a lot of chakra, hence the multiple tails," Kabuto said. When he finished, the rookie 9 were looking at Naruto, who had moved away from his wall. Before any of the rookies could ask questions, as Shino was able to revive Hinata in time to hear Naruto's info, the Jinchuriki quickly spoke up. "Subaku no Gara. Naruto stated. He wanted to see what was up with him, as Naruto had gotten a very weird vibe from him. Sasuke perked up. He knew Naruto wouldn't ask about an opponent unless he was a challenge. He knew Naruto just preferred to fight his battles on his own. After selecting the card and calling up the info, Kabuto cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Alright, Subaku no Gaara. I don't have a lot of info on him since he's from another village, but Subaku no Gaara, Genin. 12C rank missions, 8B rank missions, and 2A rank missions. No info on his skills, but there's a note that says he's come back from every mission unharmed. Read Kabuto. He didn't really give Naruto any of the information that he wanted, but it did make him eager to find out. The information this Genin had on him also indicated that he was a spy, since he never told anyone about the A-ranked mission from Mizuki. Only the Hokage, Iruka, and himself knew about it. He had to find a way to get a note to the proctors. I see. Thank you. I always enjoy a good challenge, the blue-haired Genin said, sending a fox grin towards the bloodthirsty-looking redhead. The group was now staring at Naruto. There was no way this was the Naruto that they all knew. They were now very curious about what this new Naruto could do. They may actually have to be careful if they encounter him in the exam. Especially if he now had a bloodline that no one knew about. After recovering from their shock, Kabuto went to explain about how the countries would only send the best of the best genin to these exams, as it was a way to get future missions. Though the village you probably don't have to watch out for as Otogaker. They just sprang up, almost overnight, so they probably sent whoever they had on hand to the exams to get at least some recognition for missions. Kabuto said offhandedly. This sparked a small confrontation, as the Oto genin didn't take to that too well. After their surprise attack on Kabuto that left him vomiting on the floor with his glasses crack, a tall man in a black trench coat busted into the room, flaring his own killing intent at every genin to stop any further action. Alright, you maggots. Let us get one thing perfectly clear. There will be no attacking during this exam unless you want to be disqualified. Got it? You will only engage in combat if expressly told to do so. The Jonin said as he glanced around the room. Good. Now let the first exam begin. Welcome to Hell Gakis. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX It was a place they could get away from the harsh life of a shinobi. Currently the Jonin sensei of the Rookie 9 and Guy were sitting there talking about the chances of their teams making Chunin. Kakashi was, like usual, lazily reading his book while listening to the others talk about their teams. He felt like he should speak up since he knew who the first examiner was. This first exam will be interesting. They're being tested by Morino Ibiki, Kakashi said. Kurenai, being a rather fresh Jonin, and hadn't yet met everyone yet, so she didn't know who that was. Morino Ibiki, who's that? The red-eyed Jonin asked. Sarutobi Asuma, who had quite the crush on the beautiful Jonin and wanted to impress her, took this opportunity to do so. Morino Ibiki, the head of ANBU's torture and interrogation unit. He has made quite a reputation for himself as being a master of psychological tactics. Asuma said, taking a drag of his cigarette. Psychological tactics? Kurenai asked with a raised eyebrow. He specializes in the mind, Asuma said, going to explain. Unlike many of the torturers, he doesn't have to touch you to make you speak. He chooses to make you want to speak by torturing your mind. Kurenai, realizing how much trouble the genin were, worried a bit. Do you think any of our genin will be able to pass his test? Kurenai asked. She, probably like the others, were pressured a bit by the council to put her team in the exam since she had clan heirs on her team. Well, it consisted of clan heirs, but still. Yosh. The flames of youth in my team burn brightly. I am sure they will be able to handle this. Guy shouted with his usual gusto. Kakashi looked up from his book with a bored expression. Huh. You say something. Damn you and your too hip for school attitude, my eternal rival. If my students do not pass this part of the exam, I will run 500 laps around Konoha. And if I cannot do that, I will run up and down the Hokage monument on my hands 100 times. Guy told the room, not that anyone was really paying much attention. Guy was a prime example of how people change after experiencing the harsh life of a shinobi for so long, though Kakashi swore he was always like that. Konoha was just known for its eccentric shinobi above most other things. After that excitement, Asuma chose to continue the conversation. Well, anyway, Shikamaru is a genius, so I'm sure he will figure something out and then help Choji. As for Ino, well, she has her clan's jutsu to help her out. How about you, Kakashi? Kakashi closed his single visible eye for a moment as he put his thoughts together. After a moment he lowered his book to look at them. Honestly, I'm not sure. Sakura and Sasuke, I believe, will be fine. They were Kunoichi and Rookie of the Year. As for Naruto, I honestly have no idea anymore. Kakashi said, his tone changing more to a confused tone from his usual bored tone. This the Jonin around him caught quickly. What do you mean you have no idea? Wasn't Naruto pretty much a complete failure at the academy? Kurenai asked before widening her eyes at what she just said. Speaking quickly to cover herself, no offense, I mean his grades weren't the best. Kakashi motioned that he took no offense. No, he wasn't. As you all know, he failed 3 times to pass the Genin test. But after our mission in Wave, Naruto changed completely. Kakashi said, now looking down at the table they were at. While waiting for me to show up at team meetings, I would catch him studying. According to the Hokage, all Naruto has done for the past 5 months is eat twice a day, then immerse himself in his training and studying. I couldn't find where he was training as it kept switching all the time, so I no longer actually know what his capabilities are. I think we will find his performance in this exam to be a very interesting show. The lazy Jonin told his comrades. The room went silent as they contemplated what Kakashi had told them. They all agreed that they would have to keep an eye on Naruto to see what all he was able to do. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Back in the exam room, the test was just finishing up. Naruto was thoroughly happy with his performance. Okay, so he couldn't take all the credit, since it was actually Coco who figured out the test from her perch on his shoulders. From where she laid, she had a good view to be able to get what information he needed. He was able to answer the one question on anatomy that was there, since he had been studying human anatomy for the better part of 5 months continuously. As the team was winding down, Naruto subtly looked around and saw quite a few empty seats. Naruto, while still nervous for the 10th question, was ready for whatever it could be. Looking at the clock, Ibiki's smirk grew. Okay everyone, pencils down. It is time now for the final question of the test. This question has a few special set of rules. First of all, you will have a choice of whether or not to take this final question. This brought a murmur from all of the genin, only to make Ibiki's grin even bigger. However, if you choose to not take it, you are done. You will fail, and as such so will your team. Second is if you do take the question and answer incorrectly, you will forever remain a genin forever. At this, the girl Naruto remembered as Tamari spoke out, you can't do that. Other people have taken this test multiple times. This brought out multiple other genin who spoke up in agreement. Ibiki just started to laugh, a deep and throaty laugh. Well, Ibiki said as he finished laughing, they didn't have me running the exam. Tough luck for all of you. Ibiki answered. Everyone was quiet before a few teams raised their hands to quit. Naruto kept still, his face a calm and cool mask. He turned his head just in time to notice his own teammate was starting to raise her hand to give up. He himself didn't think Sakura was ready for this, but he couldn't let her make the whole team fail. The Jinchuriki knew he had to intervene, and quickly. Naruto raised his hand only to slam it down onto the desk, making a slight dent. Coco couldn't only shake her head at her companion's energy. That's crap and you know it. Naruto yelled out, gaining everyone's attention with his outburst. I'll take the question even if I have to remain a genin forever. Anyone who's read the shinobi laws knows that it's the cage's choice to promote or demote their shinobi, and no one else can decide that. Ibiki looked at the blue-haired genin with a straight face, though inwardly he was smiling. Taking a look around the room showed that not only had he saved his own teammate with his outburst, as he could see she was about to give in, but he also managed to raise the confidence of every genin in the room. Ibiki was pretty impressed with the Uzumaki brat. He was one of the few brats who he couldn't tell whether or not he had cheated or if he actually knew the answers. He had seen his head down the whole time, and if the fox was feeding him answers then he made no show of ever getting them. Hell, at times he thought the fox was actually napping. But now the brat had brought up the spirits of an entire room, which was a quality any leader would need. Seeing that he probably couldn't intimidate anyone else into quitting, he gave one last final call. Anyone else? Anyone wish to quit while you still can? Getting no response and only looks of determination from both the genin as well as the Chunin watchers, he turned and gave a genuine smile. All right then. All of you in this room, pass. Ibiki waited a few moments to let it sink in before the first outbursts came. What do you mean we pass? What about the 10th question? Tamari questioned. Ibiki gave a throaty chuckle. Simple. You pass. You can say the 10th question of the exam was actually the decision on whether or not to take the question at all. The first part of the exam, as I'm sure many of you discovered, was to test your ability to gain information. This is a key skill you will need as a shinobi. Those that we discovered cheating, we failed. If you were clumsy enough to get caught here, then you would certainly get your squad killed in the field. As for the last question, Chunin are leaders. They much have the ability to lead a squad often into situations that mean life or death. The final question was just a way to see if you would be able to handle being placed in a no-win scenario, and still come out with the courage it would take to continually face that danger. Ibiki explained. He was going to continue until he felt a familiar chakra signature. Not again. The Hokage's going to bill us for this, again, he thought to himself. Suddenly a black ball slammed into the window, shattering it and exploding into the room. The ball, once inside the room, seemed to unravel, as kunai were launched from the center. The black cloth was a banner that read, Mitarashi Anko, Konoha's Iest Kunoichi and proctor of the second exam, and in front of it stood a purple-haired Kunoichi, wearing a mesh armor bodysuit, a burnt orange skirt and a tank trench coat. On her shins she wore what looked to be standard Anbu shin guards. All right Gakis. I'm the second proctor, Anko said, striking a pose. When she heard no applause she opened her eyes to see the genin just staring at her. Give a quick count, she rounded on the first proctor. Ibiki, what the hell? You let 26 teams pass. You're going soft in your old age. Ibiki just gave a quiet chuckle. That or this year's applicants are just that good. Ibiki countered. Peef, Anko said until her eyes came upon a face she had seen quite a few times. This is going to be fun. The Gaki made it. Anko thought to herself as her eyes gave off a mischievous gleam. It won't matter anyway, because when I'm done with them, their numbers will cut in half at the very least. Anko said with a creepy smile on her face that sent a shiver up all the genin's spines. Alright, meet at training ground 44 at 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. If you fail to show up or are even a minute late you will disqualified. Anko said, before she leapt out, breaking the other window. Most of the genin were a little confused to really follow what all had just happened, or were just gawking at Anko's clothing, or lack thereof. However, they did hear their instructions for the next day and they all began to file out of the classroom. Naruto immediately left for this apartment to make sure he had all of his supplies for the next part of the test. He knew Training Ground 44 all too well. It was his favorite training ground out of all of them simply because it was the most dangerous. It was also where he met his crazy friend Anko a few months back. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Flashback. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX away from everyone. Everything is too damn open. Naruto groaned. He and Koko had been searching for a spot to train for a few hours now. I know, Naruto-kun, hey. What's see that over there? The place with the really high fences? The vixen asked. Not knowing, Naruto just shrugged. I'm not too sure, let's go take a look. Naruto said, picking up Koko, and using a chakra-enhanced jump to clear the fence in one leap. On the inside he came to what looked like a torn-up sign. Training Ground 44, this is perfect. He said, dropping the sign back in the grass. Setting the vixen down, they rushed through the giant trees to explore the grounds a bit. They found that it was one giant forest with an assortment of streams, as well as different animals everywhere. The place was perfect for just about everything they needed. The two companions kept wandering around for a bit, trying to find a nice clearing to begin their training. Naruto's hair on the back of his neck tingled, and he quickly jumped to the left as Kunai passed right where would have been. However, he wasn't so concerned by that at the moment. No, his attention was at the kunai currently pressing against his neck. Gaki, what are you doing here? Who the fuck are you? Naruto heard a cold female voice ask him. He could feel the heat of someone pressed closely to his back, and he swore he could feel through his vest. Koko was growling at the woman, her fangs bared. The woman smelled of snakes, and she was immediately on her guard. I'm just here to train. I don't like being around the villagers much, and I didn't want people spying on my training. My friends call me Naruto, but you probably heard me by another name. The Kyuubi brat. My companion here is Koko. Naruto said, hoping the introduction would diffuse the tension. He didn't like having a sharp metal object that could end his life with the flick of a wrist by his jugular veins. Hearing the title, he said, she quickly removed her kunai from his throat and hopped out in front of him. So you're the Kyuubi brat, eh? The name's Mitarashi Anko, Konoha's East Kunoichi. Though most know me by the villager's title, Snake Bitch. Don't let it get to you, the villagers are just a bunch of idiots. So they give you a hard time too, huh? Anko asked, getting a chuckling nod out of the boy. Well, we'll show 'em. Tell you what, kid, I think I can like you. Normally I don't like others in this place, they generally end up going to the hospital after I get through with them, but make yourself at home here. Just don't get your killed. I'm gonna go have fun in another spot, later Gaki. With that, the eccentric woman was off like a shot, leaving a blinking duo of Fox and Genin standing there looking at each other. Naruto-kun, what just happened? Koko asked, very much confused. Naruto shook the shock off. I'm not really sure, Koko-chan, but I think I just made a friend. This brought yet another confused look from Koko. Naruto, however, wasn't paying attention as he was more focused on what she said. Wonder why the villagers don't like her either, thought Naruto whispered to himself. Deciding to figure it out later, he and Koko went to training right away. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX around. Naruto thought to himself. Shame the villagers are too stupid to realize she isn't her ex-sensei though. After that first encounter, she would meet with him while he was out there if she wasn't on a mission. Once they grew more comfortable around each other, they told their respective stories to each other. Naruto felt Anko had become like an older sister to him now. Well, a crazy sister with a slight blood fetish, an outrageous obsession with dango, as well as no sense of modesty, but a sister nonetheless. All right, Gakis. I'm the second proctor, Anko said, striking a pose. When she heard no applause, she opened her eyes to see the genin just staring at her. Give a quick count, she rounded on the first proctor. Ibiki, what the hell? You let 26 teams pass. You're going soft in your old age. Ibiki just gave a quiet chuckle. That or this year's applicants are just that good. Ibiki countered. Peef, Anko said until her eyes came upon a face she had seen quite a few times. This is going to be fun. The Gaki made it. Anko thought to herself as her eyes gave off a mischievous gleam. It won't matter anyway, because when I'm done with them, their numbers will cut in half at the very least. Anko said with a creepy smile on her face that sent a shiver up all the genin's spines. Alright, meet at training ground 44 at 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. If you fail to show up or are even a minute late, you will disqualified. Anko said, before she leapt out, breaking the other window. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto and Koko made their exit from the examination room using the opening made from Anko's dramatic entrance. If the next part of the exam was in training ground 44, then it would most likely be a several-day trip. After a quick check of his supplies, he realized he did not have enough for this part of the test. Scolding himself for not being better prepared, the blue-haired shinobi along with his companion quickly sped to the market district and bought what they needed. Naruto had finally found a shop that wouldn't overprice him. Well, they were more expensive than the others, but it was for everyone, so he rather liked them. After they quickly gathered their supplies, which consisted of 2 sets of kunai and 4 boxes of senbon, they went back to their apartment to pack everything. A set of kunai is 20 kunai, and a box of senbon contains 100 needles, just in case anyone was wondering. After they finished packing the rest of what they would need, as well as packing any other supplies they could think of for tests afterwards, as well as writing a note about Kabuto, Naruto and Koko turned in for the night. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. It was a beautiful day in Konoha. The sun was shining brightly. A gentle and loving breeze was in the air. Standing in this beautiful weather were all of the Chunin hopefuls, as they stared past a gate into what could only be described as a dark forest. Most weren't intimidated by the forest until a 16-foot tiger tried to leap the fence, only to swatted away like a bug by Anko. Grabbing a nearby Chunin's arm to look at his watch, well, actually she just dragged the man to her, which a few of the other Chunin found funny, and she waited a few more moments for it to be 9 o'clock. Alright, Gakis. Welcome to training ground 44, affectionately called the Forest of Death. Anko yelled to the young crowd when it struck 9 o'clock. Anko subtly winked at Naruto, signaling him to start something. Naruto had quickly found out about her love for pranks, as well as scaring the crap out of anyone she could. It was a great way to let off steam against the villagers without actually causing enough harm to get in trouble. Taking only a second to think, Naruto spoke up. Forest of Death, huh? Doesn't look all that tough to me. Naruto said in an overly smug tone that drew everyone's attention to him. Anko, still playing along, took this opportunity to quickly throw a kunai at his head, being careful enough to only cut his cheek and draw a small amount of blood. Almost instantly she appeared behind him, and to scare everyone a little more, she licked his cheek, making sure everyone saw the blood she licked up. The lively ones always have the best blood. Tough guys like you tend to leave your blood painted all over the trees in this place. Anko whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, in a dark, seductive tone. This only served to freak everyone out even more, and turning on quite a few others as well. One of Anko's many talents was pulling off the seductress and sadistically crazy as hell, all at the same time. Before she could move, Naruto positioned his hand on the inside of her right thigh and pushed a note he had wrote before leaving his apartment that morning, into her fishnet leggings. Anko felt it and suppressed the urge to raise her eyebrow, though that didn't stop her from subtly forcing Naruto's hand into the apex over her groin, which earned her a very red and blushing Naruto. Suddenly both of them felt presence move behind them. Naruto, unable to move as he positioned the note, stood there. Anko, however, whipped out another kunai so she could strike at whoever was stupid enough to sneak up behind her. She came face to face with a kunoichi from Kusugker. She was holding the kunai Anko threw with an extremely long and flexible tongue. Something about this girl reminded the eccentric proctor of someone she knew, but she couldn't put her finger on whom. Your kunai, the Kusa kunoichi said in a creepy tone. Oh, why thank you Kusa-san. Next time though, try not to sneak up behind me, alright? It's a good way to get killed. Anko lightly scolded, though keeping the smile on her face for good measure. I'm so sorry. It's just the blood gets me excited, and your kunai cut my precious hair. The creepy kunoichi replied in an almost mournful tone yet still equally creepy tone. While this exchange was going on, Naruto and Koko were wafted with the scent of snakes. Anko, while having a small undertone of snake, normally smelt of dango and red bean soup. This other woman, however, was drenched in the scent of snake and blood. This put the two companions on edge immediately, as snakes didn't tend to keep friendly company. Standing straight, Anko gave a small cough as Naruto quickly retracted his hand to his side so no one saw what he was doing. Anyway, let's get the explanation for the test underway. First of all, every team will get one of these two scrolls, Anko said as she stood in front of the group of genin and held up two scrolls. One white with blue in the middle labeled Heaven, the other blue with white in the middle labeled Earth. You will all be handed one of these scrolls and then be led by a chunin to a gate. Your objective is to obtain another team's scroll that is the opposite of the scroll you have, and then make it to the tower in the middle of the forest. You will have 5 days to make it to the tower. Anyone who isn't there is disqualified. 5 days. What are we supposed to be about food? Shoji yelled out. It was usually never a good idea to get between an akamaiki and their food, they tend to get violent. The forest is a treasure trove of delicious goodies. Just make sure you don't become food yourselves in the process. This is where you are allowed to attack others, alright? You are not allowed to open the scrolls under any circumstance before you get to the tower. Anko said to the genin. What happens if you do? A genin from Iowa asked. It's a special surprise. Anko said with a creep grin, bringing a shudder out of a good proportion of the crowd. Now, before anyone begins anything, you all need to fill out these forms. Anko said, pulling forms seemingly out of thin air from her trench coat. These are just standard waivers stating that I can't get in trouble when you die in my forest because of your lack of skill to survive, since killing is allowed in this portion of the test. Don't you mean if? Shino asked in his usual monotone voice as he was handed the stack. Anko gave off an evil laugh. Haha, no, I mean when. That got a lot of people gulping in fear. Now sign the waivers. Those who don't sign the form will not move on. Your team will get their scroll when they trade in 3 forms. Oh, and just a small piece of advice, just don't die. With that, Anko departed to help set the scroll booth up and make sure everything was running smoothly. Some of the genin seemed nervous that killing was allowed in this portion of the test, but every team signed their waivers and picked up their scroll. When it was Team 7's turn to get a scroll, they happened to get a Heaven scroll, which Naruto quickly took and hid it in one of the many spots in his vest. To stop any outbursts from happening, he left the booth quickly. His teammates might be fuming, but at least they were smart enough not to point out that he had the scroll. As they were escorted to their gate, Naruto started to form a plan in his head on how they should go through with this. He had the most knowledge and experience with the forest, so he knew he had to use that knowledge to their advantage. Alright guys, I've got a plan, Naruto started to say, only to be rudely interrupted. Ha! You have a plan. Oh, this ought to be good. Sasuke said in a smug tone. Yeah, Naruto Baka, you should just let Sasuke-kun lead, Sakura started to say only to stop after a growl was heard. Koko had just about enough of the insults towards her companion. She bared her fangs and made ready to attack. Koko, that's enough, Naruto said softly, and the vixen stopped immediately. The blue-haired shinobi turned back to his team. Look, I've been in this forest before. Besides, think about the test. There are too many variables to make a perfectly effective plan. We can only work with what we know, which I just so happen to have the most knowledge of the three of us on this forest. We know that everyone has a start point and an end point. We also know that by the time everyone gets to the end point, they'll most likely have the scrolls they need, or are attempting to set up traps to wait for those who have scrolls. If we wait by the tower, not only are we not running around this forest, which could be dangerous as we could run into multiple groups at once or something we can't handle, we can lay traps and set the field to our advantage since everyone has to go to the tower to complete the exam. Naruto said. When Naruto finished his explanation, his teammates gave him stupefied looks and the same thing was going through their heads. Is this really Naruto? Naruto waited for one of them to voice their displeasure with the plan, but when neither of them said anything he just nodded and readied himself for a fast run while Koko made sure that she wouldn't fall from his shoulders. We'll need to move quickly to get there so we can set up traps before anyone else gets there. Most likely others will think to do this as well, so we might be able to hit one of them while they're busy setting up their traps. If we're lucky, we'll be able to finish this off before the end of the day. Naruto thought to himself enthusiastically. As time clicked off, Naruto was ready to make the fast journey. Looking over to his teammates, he saw that they too were ready. The Chunin guarding their gate looked at his watch before he undid the padlocks that held the gate shut. After that was removed, he stood looking at his watch to make sure he had the correct time. All right, Gakis, Enko's voice came through a loudspeaker system. You know your mission. All Chunin are to open the gates in 1 minute. Remember, good luck and don't die. Well, that's reassuring, Naruto muttered loud enough for his teammates to hear. The Chunin also heard it and chuckled a little before composing himself. Naruto's team stood still, almost statues, as they waited for the seconds to click by and the gates to be opened. Tick, 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 asterisk beep, asterisk. A loud bell rang through the area and all the gates were thrown open. Each team that was taking the exam rushed off into the forest, each hoping to gain the upper hand over the others. Naruto's team was no different. They sped off towards the tower, Naruto taking lead with Koko jumping from branch to branch beside him. Both were alert for any danger, as they knew the forest held dangerous things that were only waiting for you drop your guard so it could kill you. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Enko stood on the top of the barbed wire fence for a few minutes waiting for all the teams to take off. A few went at a slow pace, but they all made it into the forest. As the Chunin helpers all started to trickle in and report that the gates had been securely locked again, she couldn't help but think back to the Kusa-nin who had given back her kunai. The kunoichi's presence seemed so damn familiar, and it was bugging her not knowing who it was that she was reminded of. Mitarashi-san. Enko turned her head to see a Chunin standing by the fence. Report. Enko ordered. She wanted these checks to be over so she could go get some dango and think. All gates have been secured. All teams are in the training ground. Everything is running as expected. The Chunin said. Enko knew that she knew this guy, but she just didn't care to remember his name right now. Good, Enko said as she dropped down only to feel something scratch the inside of her thigh. Then she remembered Naruto putting something inside her fishnet legging. Reaching down, and still in front of the Chunin, she pulled the note out and ignored the blushing and looks of confusion on the faces around her as she read it. Enko-chan, hope I got this to you all right. I just wanted to let you know of a possible spy in the Chunin exam. His name is Yakushi Kabuto. He knows way too much about me, specifically things that weren't publicized, as well as the fact that he smells of blood and snakes, though not sure if that means anything to you. Just felt you should know. Sincerely, the annoying Gaki. Enko would have chuckled at the title she normally called him at the end. It wasn't that he was all that annoying really, in fact he was a welcome anomaly in her life. It was nice to be able to not only interact with someone who didn't exactly hate her, but also knew somewhat what it was like to be treated horribly by the village. To her they were kin in spirit. Back to the note though, how this kid, this Yakushi Kabuto, smelled put her on edge. There were only 2 people in the world who were allowed the hubby summoning contract. Hell, she was the current owner of it after she was able to have her own summon steal it away from her old sensei Orochimaru after he ended up creating another contract after the division of the snakes. For him to smell so strongly of snakes and blood only meant that this Kabuto had to be either in league with Orochimaru, or somehow gained the summoning contract. She was going for the prior simply because she knew the contract hadn't been accessed at all. Ignoring everyone else, Anko quickly took the note, as well as her own thoughts, and made her way as fast as she could to the Hokage. He needed to know that Orochimaru could possibly be in Konoha, and if he was, then they had one of his spies and they needed to capture him. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Nothing had really changed since Naruto was last in the forest. Trees were all still in the same place, not like they could be moved anyway. The river was still flowing, nothing new there. Of course the bloodthirsty, man-eating animals were always still there. Dear Kami, kill them with fire. Sakura screamed out as giant leeches fell from the trees in an attempt to get at them. Yep, there was no place like the forest and Naruto had come to love being here. With a quick swing of his sword he cut 5 of the leeches in half while Sasuke used a quick Kaden jutsu to roast 4 others and thrown kunai to pierce 3 more. Sakura was shaking and desperately trying to hide behind her 2 teammates. What the fuck were those? Sakura asked in her usual screech. Naruto winced a little and Koko actually tried to cover her ears from atop his head. Naruto sighed. Those would be giant leeches. And Sakura, Naruto said, gaining her attention, can you please be quiet? I'd rather not have every team find us right now when we're less than 5 hours from the tower. Sakura had the decency to blush too at the comment and quickly apologized for being overly loud when she didn't need to be. Sasuke stood back watching the exchange. He couldn't fathom how much Naruto had changed, and in such a short amount of time. People could change. He knew that all too well if his brother's actions against the Uchiha clan were anything to go by, but normally it took longer than just a couple short months for changes to become immediately noticeable. It's not as if Team 7 trained a whole lot together, but on a few of the rare occasions when Sasuke wanted a sparring partner he would always look for Naruto. Not so much because Sasuke thought Naruto was strong or anything, but he would admit that Naruto had the endurance and chakra to keep going when most couldn't. Naruto gave him a challenge that others just couldn't. Now, however, Sasuke wasn't too sure. Naruto was wielding his giant blade without any visible difficulty, his speed was greatly increased, and although he hadn't used any jutsu, Sasuke couldn't help but question if he was greater in that area as well. If he was honest with himself, this Naruto almost frightened him. He was more controlled, precise, almost to a lethal level, and coupled that with his stamina, chakra and skills, well, Sasuke knew any fight with the brunette would be insanely difficult unless you could clearly overpower him and end it right away. Naruto heaved a sigh. Alright, let's quickly, I'd rather not be here if anyone heard all of that. Getting nods from his teammates, they once again took off to the trees. Someone's following us, Koko said from her place on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto made no move to show that he heard her, however she knew she had his attention. Whoever it is has been following us for some time. They've stayed just outside of our range, I only know someone's there since the wind in here blows everywhere because the giant trees mess with the air currents, so I was able to catch their scent for a moment. Naruto slowly nodded, turning his head slightly to show a raised eyebrow. Koko understood the silent question. I smell blood and snakes. The eye that Koko could see widened for a moment before returning back to its normal size as Naruto faced forward again. Shit. Knew that Kusa-nin was bad news. Hopefully she won't think to attack us if we're close enough to the tower. Now the question is, can we make it there before she strikes, or are we going to be fighting before we have a chance to get there safely? Naruto thought to himself. Turning his head to look back forward, he called behind him, "Come on, let's hurry up. We should get there soon. Once all our traps are in place, then we can rest." Naruto heard a mumbled acknowledgement from Sakura, and Sasuke's classic, HN, of agreement. All three genin quickly put on a burst of speed with the help of chakra, and Naruto knew that they would be at the tower in less than an hour depending on if they have to stop for Sakura, who Naruto could hear breathing heavily. Hell, he'd carry her so long as they make it there. If nothing else, the tower would offer a security they needed. No one would be stupid enough to attack that close to the tower so openly because it would draw everyone's attention. They'd have to fight close to every team in the exam, and every team would come in hopes of getting an easy scroll. They traveled for another 45 minutes, before they slowed down to get a little rest. Sakura had sat down, and was sipping at her canteen. Sasuke was leaning against a tree with his eyes closed, but Naruto could tell that he was trying to control his breathing, probably not wanting to show that he needed rest just like everyone. Naruto was just standing looking at his team, wondering what to do about the person still following them. Though they had seemed to have stopped with them, they were still there and still a threat. A soft fluffy paw suddenly tapped him on his cheek. "I found another team. They're over that way," Koko said, pointing with her paw to a clump of trees. "They're up high, seems they're trying to stick to the top branches, about 25 meters up and 100 meters in that direction." Naruto nodded. "Hey," Naruto said quietly to get Sakura and Sasuke's attention, "there's a team nearby, probably had the same idea as us. About 100 meters and in the trees." Naruto reported. Sasuke smirked, probably relishing a challenge. Sakura looked a little frightened, though she was trying to hide it. "So what's the plan, Dobi?" Sasuke asked, still leaning on the tree. That gained shocked expressions from the blue and pink-haired genin. "What?" Sasuke asked upon seeing their expressions with a raised eyebrow. "This has been Naruto's plan from the start. Might as well let him lead since he does have more knowledge on this stupid forest." Naruto couldn't help the chuckle that left his mouth. Sasuke was actually going to let someone else lead. Oh, how the surprises of the day wouldn't end. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment while he thought on a plan before opening them to address his team. "Alright, we know their position, and hopefully they don't know ours, though that's probably a stupid assumption. So here's what we should do. Sasuke and I will climb the trees right away, using the branches as cover. Sakura, you stick with Koko, and if any make a run for it, you eliminate them quickly. However, you should keep your medkit handy just in case. Koko will be able to keep you safe for the most part. Sasuke, we're going to need to keep an eye out for traps, got it?" Naruto finished saying, looking to his teammate who just nodded. Without another word, they all took off in the direction, Naruto leading the way with Koko on his head, giving him directions to the enemy team. As they reached the trees that Koko had pointed out, they had already had to bypass several traps. Mind you, they were amateur trap versus the traps that Naruto used for his pranks, so they were easy to get around for the team. Naruto was able to pick up the enemy's scent, and used hand signs to tell his team that the other team wasn't moving. Naruto thought they seemed rather, which would work perfectly for them. Naruto and Sasuke dropped their packs silently and quickly ascended the tree, making sure that they had a branch covering them at all times. As they made it close to the enemy, Naruto was able to see that it was an AIM squad. Neither Naruto nor Sasuke could make out what they looked like because they had their faces covered. Sending a quick signal to Sasuke to start his attack, Naruto readied Senbon. He was going to just take them out quickly and leave them in the trees. With any luck they'd have the scroll they needed and they could be on their merry way. Sasuke jumped onto the branch with the AIM team and quickly addressed them. Well, seems you all got rather. Sasuke said in a smug tone, a smirk on his face and his arms behind his head in the universal, I'm in and think I'm better than you, stance. The three AIM shinobi quickly stood up only to face plant. Sasuke raised an eyebrow in confusion of what happened. As he got closer he saw Senbon in their necks. What are you waiting for? A voice came out, and all of a sudden Naruto dropped down in the middle of the three down shinobi. Naruto quickly began to search the bodies of the AIM nin while Sasuke just stared wide-eyed at his teammate. How the hell did he do that? He used to have difficulty hitting with kunai, now he'd doing what that stupid fake hunter nin did in Nami. Sasuke thought to himself as he had a small panic attack over his teammate's abilities. While Sasuke was in his own little world, Naruto had finally found what he was looking for. An earth scroll. Naruto quickly grabbed it and then removed the Senbon from the AIM nin. He figured that if nothing else, they'll be long gone by the time they wake up, and if they choose to attack any other groups to try to get back in, well, that's more of the competition out. Naruto turned to Sasuke after he had collected his Senbon, and saw him just standing there. Sasuke! Naruto yelled out and succeeded in snapping him out of his daze. He pulled out their team's heaven scroll and tossed it in the earth scroll to Sasuke. I want you to go back down to Sakura. I'll cover from the shadows to make sure our team can make it to the tower. Sasuke caught both of the scrolls on reflex, but went to argue with Naruto on his plan only to find the dobi gone. Cursing, he quickly jumped from branch to branch down the tall as shit tree. As he hit the ground, Sakura came running up to him to make sure he was okay. Are you hurt? You're not bleeding, are you? Did we get the scroll? Sakura shot off the questions in rapid succession. Sasuke just put his hand over her mouth to shut her up. Hell, he was half tempted to put tape over the giant loudspeaker she calls a mouth. No, I'm fine. We have both scroll. Naruto is going to cover us from the shadows so we won't run into any trouble. We're making a beeline to the tower. We're not stopping for anything, got it? Sasuke said in a commanding tone. Sakura just nodded and grabbed her bag while Sasuke grabbed his. Sasuke questioned where Naruto's bag was, but Sakura just said the fox took it with her when she ran off. Without further delay, both genin took off as fast as they could towards the tower. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto stood in the trees watching his team run towards their objective. He made sure to keep his presence hidden and stayed to the shadows. He chose to do this for two reasons. The first reason being that he'd be able to catch anyone before they were able to get to his team. He may not like them a whole lot. It isn't as if they were his favorite people in the world, but they were his team. If there was anything that Kakashi had taught them, it was that teammates keep each other safe. The second reason was the more important to Naruto. Someone had been tailing them for the longest time, and Naruto wanted to make sure said person wasn't able to get up on his team without them being able to fight back, and he wanted to see who was skilled enough to evade them for so long without even giving themselves away. As Naruto kept to the shadows, he was able to stay far enough back to now pick up the trailer's scent and sound. Naruto had to admit, this guy was good, he was just barely able to pick up his sound, and his scent, thanks to the damn giant trees, was everywhere. His team was about 5 minutes away from the tower, when Naruto finally decided to make a stand and slow the person down. Kage Bushin no Jutsu, Naruto muttered, creating 15 Bushin with the single hand seal. They quickly fanned out in a line between the person trailing them and his team, while he took off at his fastest speed to get to his team. As Naruto made it to them, they were just standing at the stone doors waiting for him. Get inside. Naruto yelled at them. They didn't even seem to try to argue as they quickly threw the doors open and Naruto and Koko were not even a second behind them. They quickly closed the doors and moved into the big room they had just entered. What? Was something after you? Sakura asked, wondering why her teammate had seemingly panicked for no reason. We had someone tailing us the whole time. I didn't want to alert them by tell you guys, or we might have forced a conflict. The problem was I could barely get a fix on him. So I used a few cage bushin to keep him busy. I'm sure they were able to stall him long enough, I just wanted to make sure we were able to get in here quickly. Now we have a little over 4 days to rest. Naruto explained cheerfully. Sakura began to wonder his teammate was, as he was acting more and more like a seasoned shinobi than the rookie everyone knew. Sasuke just stopped caring about all the changes Naruto had made, and chose to focus on just getting strong so he wasn't left behind by the dobi. Sakura noticed a message hung on the wall and pointed it out to the rest of the group. What do you make of that? If qualities of heaven are your desire, acquire wisdom to take your mind higher. If earthly qualities are what you lack, train your body and prepare to attack. When heaven and earth are opened together, the perilous path will become righteous forever. This secret, something, is the secret something that will guide us from this place today. Sakura read out loud. Naruto must to himself. Sasuke closed his eyes in contemplation until an idea came to him. Pulling out both scrolls in front of him, he opened them up completely ignoring the warning cries of him teammates. Smoke started to sizzle out of them and he quickly threw them away from himself. When they hit the concrete ground they went up in a poof of smoke. Each member of the team was on their guard. Sakura had a kunai out and at the ready, though she seemed nervous. Sasuke had his hands ready to run through hand seals for jutsu, and Naruto had his hand on his blade. As the most cleared, all three genin relaxed as the face before them was a friendly one. Long time no see.